All right, we are recording for The White Snake, which is actually an odd name for this story. Hmm. But it's what, 19 of the stories so far in this? Excuse me. Um, the funny thing is, I suspect this story actually has roots in Greek mythology. Well, Greco-Roman mythology. I tend to refer to it as that, even though it's not that simple. Where was it that I saw something saw it pointed out that a lot of Greco-Roman mythology. Well, I mean, Rome, yes, got a lot from Greece, but not just from there. But also a lot of it actually was like other uh, cults that basically these people encountered in other locations and then just brought them in. Like Apollo, for example, is not seen. When you think about Greco-Roman mythology, is not seen as that high a deity. I mean, yes, he is one of the Olympians, but he's not like seen as the level of Zeus. But there were in fact cults of Apollo where yes, he was the chief god then. So you do see stuff like that, and it makes it a lot more interesting actually to think about some of the mythology. But in any case, let's get back to this, the White Snake. It starts where you got a king who has this odd habit. After every dinner, he has everyone leave the room, and his servant bring him a dish that is covered. And the servant doesn't see what's in there. He leaves. The king does whatever. The servant comes back and removes the dish, still covered. Eventually, his curiosity gets better of him, and he takes it back to his quarters and opens up and looks inside, and he finds in there a white snake. Curiously, it doesn't indicate whether or not it is alive or dead. Um, Yeah, but when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it, so he cut off a little bit and put it into his mouth. That is never the thought that comes to my mind when I envision a snake, white or otherwise. So, yeah. Anyway, he did that and found that it imbued him with the ability to understand the language of animals, so he could hear the birds and such, not just chirping, but actually talking outside the window and things like that. Now, if I get analytical, we have a certain problem here. He does this once, and then for the rest of the story, he maintains this ability. Yet the king is getting this dish at the end of every dinner, so the king's having to consume it, presumably, every day. It's also, how do you account for the snake still, like, existing? Like, does it regenerate every night? Which, I mean, it's a fairy tale. It's possible. But yeah, and I do have more I want to talk about with that, but we'll get to that later. It's got to do with what I think might be a connection back to Greek mythology. But moving on. Sometime later, the queen has lost a ring and is quite upset. And so say, okay, well, somebody must have stolen it, because obviously that's what you would think happened. And in a way, it's true. But because this is the most trusted servant and has free reign of the castle or palace, and so is able to enter any room, has the keys for everywhere, all that, he is the chief suspect. And the king tells him that you can either find the actual thief, or in the morning, I'm just going to assume you're guilty and kill you. Have you executed for this crime. Yep. Now he hasn't got any idea. But he is outside and hears two ducks talking. One of them mentions that basically he was eating very greedily and ate the ring underneath the queen's window. So like, the queen lost and the duck ate it. So he was like, perfect. Grabs the duck, brings it into the cook, and is like, hey, this looks like a nice duck. Why don't you butcher it now? So they do that. The cook does that and is basically witness then to the ring falling out. So clearly it was the duck that ate it. It wasn't stolen. So the king's like, okay, I screwed up by accusing you. So to make amends, anything you want, it's yours. If you can have whatever high office in my kingdom you want. Obviously, that would not include king, but you get the idea. Anything you want. He's like, actually, I want a horse and some money. I want to travel. I want to see the world. Okay, here you go. So he leaves, and as he travels, he continues to hear the animals speaking. There's some fish that are caught in reeds, so they can't move around, can't get more water. So he picks them up and moves them out. So they're happy and are like, "Will we pay this favor?" One good turn deserves another. That's not actually what the fish say, but some of the others do say it. It's basically, I'm pretty sure that is the moral to the stories. One good turn deserves another, so be kind. So he saves these fish, gets that promise. As he's continuing on his horse, he hears the king of the ants complaining about how, well, the horse is stepping on them, but how everyone just steps on them. No one pays attention, tries to avoid them. So he's like, all right, directs the horse over to a side, to like a side road, so that he's not disturbing the ants. And again, one good turn deserves another, the king ant says. Continuing on, and this one actually doesn't make any sense to me. Encounters a nest of ravens where the two parents have decided that, well, it's hard enough for us to feed ourselves, so we're just going to push the young ravens out of the nest, so they're going to fall, and you can just figure out how to feed yourselves. But they're like, we're too young, we're just going to starve to death. So what does this dude do? He grabs his sword and kills his horse for the ravens to eat. And I'm just like, did the horse not have anything to say about this? Like, what are you doing with that sword? What are you thinking here, dude? I mean, don't you like me? Haven't I been helpful? And it just seems odd that suddenly it's like, yeah, I'll kill the horse to feed these ravens. But again, you have the one good turn deserves another. So they continue. Then he continues walking into a city, and there the city has its own king, and princess there, and the princess has decided it is time to take a husband. But the thing is, you have to complete some hard task in order to prove worthy of her. Traditional fairy tale kind of stuff. Or rather, just traditional princess lore, if you will. That you have to prove yourself worthy. And it's like, oh, okay. Caesar is like, okay, I'm doing this. So, goes to offer himself as a suitor, and it's like, okay. This is the king dealing with it. It's like, okay, here's this gold ring. There's the sea. Get me that gold ring. They all leave then, and he's like, what am I going to do? I have no idea what I'm going to do. Well, the fish come up now, and he doesn't ask them. They just come up. So it's not like that they're truly aware that he understands them. Comes up, and one of them has a muscle with it that inside is the ring. So, hang on, I got something on my glasses there. Yeah, one fun thing with glasses is when you can see the dirt on them. Anyhow, so he's got the gold ring, goes to the king, and is like, great, can't get married now. Well, maybe the king would be okay with that. The princess is like, no, we're not of equal birth, so you have to keep proving yourself. So here's another task. Takes 10 bags of seed, throws it out in the garden, and it's like, you need to pick up every single grain by morning, or you lose your head. I mean, obviously he's going to do it because it's fairy tale. Well, it's going to be achieved because it's fairy tale, but it still is one of those, I'd almost be like, hey, king, it was for only one. And I'm not saying that this isn't fair, but I feel like I should at least be able to walk out. Come on now. But he goes into the garden and is basically just crying. I don't remember if I actually just say that he's crying or not, but he has no idea what to do. Okay, no, it is here. Yeah, sat sorrowfully. So not necessarily crying, but, sad. Awaiting the break of day, and then, for when he would then be led to his death. But as the sun came up, the bags were filled with all the seed, none were left out, because the king of ants had come, and with thousands of ants had done all the work for him. Again, he didn't even need to ask. It was just, one good turn deserves another. He helped us. We're going to help you. That's it. Nothing more complicated than that. Well, the princess is still prideful and annoying. And it's like, bring me an apple from the tree of life. It. I don't even know where the hell that is. So he goes out, and at least in this situation, it's not like you're gonna die if you don't do this. It's more of a don't come back kind of thing. So at least it's that going for him. He leaves, he's going through various kingdoms trying to find it. At least know where the tree is. Nothing. Eventually he falls asleep under a tree, or at least lies down, rests against a tree. A golden apple falls in his lap. Looks up. 3 full-grown ravens explaining that we heard of your trouble. We are the 3 that you fed before, that you saved our lives. So we found the tree of life at the end of the world and brought this for you. Now, he takes this golden apple, returns to that kingdom, and offers it to the princess, who is now out of excuses. Yeah. The youth, full of joy, set out homewards and took the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who had no more excuses left to make. So she's not necessarily happy about this still. But this gets a little interesting. They cut the apple of life in 2 and ate it together. That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's essentially a wedding gift, you could almost say. And then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. It's like, the apple did that? I don't know. I just find that a little curious. I guess it is. You have to give some explanation for why she suddenly goes from "I don't want him" and to keeping it from it being a loveless marriage, at least on her part. Because I mean, technically, she was at this point absolutely compelled to marry him. That's like, no, she does actually love him. I guess maybe just gives an explanation there. But anyway, well, as I said, with the moral definitely seems to be kind to those around you, and do so without without necessarily having to be asked, even because of how one good turn deserves another. His life was saved by 2 of them, and then he got his wife thanks to the 3rd. So there's that. And technically, also, it was 3 because 3 times that his life was saved, because he would have been killed if he hadn't learned about the duck. Eating the ring. But anyway, coming back to the whole Greek mythology stuff. Asclepius? No, that's not it. But the mythological first doctor. And by the way, this is technically wrong because the U.S. Army made a mistake. You do see some that has it correct, though. An image for medicine, it's not the caduceus. That's the wrong one. I don't remember the name of it. But it is a staff with a single snake wound around it. The incorrect one has 2, and that was a mistake made by the U.S. Army at some point, and it's stuck. But you do see it correct. You do see the correct thing on many modern things. But anyhow, I wish I could remember the name of this mythological first doctor. The reason for the snake there is because in their mythology, a snake knew the secrets of the earth because it travels along the earth in a way that no other species really does, unless you want to count insects. But insects are a little different than animals, at least as far as the Greeks, I'm sure, are concerned. And it's also, insects are just weirder than animals, even snakes. But yeah, so there is that element there. So I do wonder if the white snake is actually harkening back to that kind of myth, to that kind of legend, that they are a source of knowledge. In this case, it's a source of knowledge from from animals, not the earth per se, but it is also like one of the stories I remember was Greek mythology stories was a prince had fallen ill, and the king summoned this doctor to try to heal him, and he had no idea. He looked over the kid. I had no idea. It seems he's cursed. Well, what is the source of the curse? Well, asks the snake, who whispers it into his ear, because it's a staff, and it's like, bring it over so he can whisper in, so he hears it. And the snake tells him that the prince, not really the best of boys, had taken a dagger and stabbed it into a tree. And that dagger has wounded that tree, and the wood nymph in there, which, well, that I can talk about in a little bit, put a curse on him because of this wound. So what you need to do is you need to dig that out, clean it, purify it, and then that will satisfy the nymph so that the curse would be lifted. But no, the thing I want to say there is there's nymph, as I recall for Greco-Roman mythology, nymphs are actually gods and goddesses. That is the level that they exist at, or the same kind of thing as river gods and such. The Olympians are titans, which are a higher level of being. Okay, so it is one of those things that technically, when you refer to like Zeus as a god, that is incorrect. I mean, in a broad sense term of mythological gods, yes, he's a god. But more correctly, he's a titan, which is a higher level of being. And so he would be greater than that. It also reminds me, when I read through, would have been the Iliad, to help give an idea of how powerful he specifically is. He actually, because he's making decisions and the other Olympians are not too happy with him concerning how the Trojan War is going and how he wants it to go, that he makes the point. Even if all of you were to try to defy me on this, if you all were on one side of a chain and I was on the other, I would still be able to lift all of you and the earth. It's like, jeez. It is interesting because I don't recall, and I like Greco-Roman mythology, I don't recall ever seeing something describing their physical strength as that disparate between them. I mean, it's like that's very powerful, especially when you consider he's the youngest of the six main Olympians. Hades, of the sons, is the eldest, Poseidon the middle, and then Zeus is the youngest. The actual eldest is Hestia? Crap, I don't remember. Goddess of the hearth, though. Mother of Penelope. Anyhow, there's another Greco-Roman piece of mythology here, or at least I am interpreting it as that, which is a reference to the Tree of Life, and it being at the end of the world, and it being described as a golden apple that's on there. Well, that sounds like with Hercules, and I actually checked, it's the 11th labor that he was given, that he needed to retrieve 3 apples from this tree from the garden of the Hesperides. There's no way I'm pronouncing it correctly. Sorry. But he had to get them. But I'm trying to remember exactly why it was. I have the Wikipedia article here, but that's not necessarily going to give me everything I need to know here. And it does vary. It's like why he needs to get Atlas to do it. Atlas is a Titan. Would it actually be like uncle to Zeus and such? And he's the one that holds up the heavens above the earth. But Hercules takes that weight on so that Atlas can do this for him, and then Atlas is gonna try to like trick him to never have to bear that again, because that was his punishment for going against Zeus and the other Olympians. But I don't remember exactly why it is that Hercules cannot touch them himself. I did see one thing point out that in some versions of the myth, Atlas is actually the father of the Hesperides, so he is able to get things from them. But I feel like there's also there's a creature guardian that Atlas would not have to be concerned about, or even that just picking them would kill Hercules, that you need to be fully immortal, and Hercules is not. At least not at this time. His death was, he was exposed to the poison of the Hydra, and this caused him great pain, but because he was strong enough and had sufficient immortality, even as a human, it would not kill him, and so he had his funeral pyre made, and he just rested on it, essentially, so it would burn away his mortality, turning him into completely immortal, and then he ascended to Olympus to be a god of one thing or another. I don't actually remember what, but by the way, like Apollo, there were cults of Hercules. I think that you found those more towards the Caspian Sea, though. Wait, no. Is that right? To the east. So, where Turkey is? I think it was more so in that area and further east than the main area of Greece. Anyhow. As said, though, it is interesting when you start seeing where certain things came about and then how stories were intermingled, and also how names changed, because that's another thing where Dionysus potentially was actually a different god completely from a cult. Like he was brought in and it's just different names. And yeah, anyhow. But yeah, so I do wonder if the White Snake story is actually pulling together certain elements from Greek mythology, which would make it's some of its origins thousands of years old even. Yeah, just it is described as the ravens flew over the sea to the end of the world where the tree of life stands, and have brought you the apple. Well, that's for Atlas. He was at the ends of the world. So yeah, I mean, and so that's where the tree also would have been. Some were very difficult to access. So it is quite similar there. So don't you love getting tongue-tied? One disadvantage to not doing scripts and not editing, but here's what it is. I would say that I think that this is more so a reference to Greco-Roman mythology than Christian mythology with the Tree of Life and Tree of Knowledge in the Garden of Eden. I do think that is more accurate than the Christian mythology because we're cast out. We're not supposed to ever gain access to that again. Well, at least certainly not in this context. So it also wouldn't make sense that the ravens would be able to go there and bring something out to a human. That would be forbidden. So yeah, going to the Labors of Hercules, that is that tree. I think that's probably more reasonable. I don't know. I could probably do some research, but I don't really feel like it. I mean, to me, it is more enjoyable to read these and just based on what I know from other things. As I said, I've long enjoyed Greco-Roman mythology, so to see references to that, I like that more. And in some ways, it's I like it as a way to also verify the time I do take to read things like this. So it's like, reading this, I may then, when reading another book, find other things being talked about that. Like I other references. So like with Rumpelstiltskin, how I talked about stuff with the names in Tolkien. Was it then or was it in a different one where I mentioned that maybe I will at some point go through the Silmarillion and that part of the Legendarium for assigned reading? I don't know if I will do that because, as I'm pretty sure I said then, that would probably be exposing my own stupidity because Tolkien writes at a higher level than I might be comfortable reading, especially for alright, I finished a chapter, time to talk about it. Yeah, I don't know. There are other stories I would want to do before that, so, which is disappointing because I also do want to read that stuff. But it will be interesting to still read those, and then potentially recognize things that I know out of Greco-Roman mythology, out of fairy tales and such. So, yeah, it is how I would prefer to experience this than looking it up and seeing all the history there, at least until I'm done. I'm just like, when I'm done, then I'm done, and that's different. I mean, like the whole read through Edith Hamilton, then end up looking into the history of how the various cults that the Greeks encountered, they then incorporated into their mythos, into their mythologies, and how the stories changed. It's like, you have the familiarity, then do that instead of trying to do it all at once. I guess that's how I'm trying to put it. Okay. Plenty of mind blathering, most likely. The name of the next one is The Queen Bee, which I am actually a little curious about. Okay, we got something with ducks here, and we got something with three girls here. But I am kind of curious about that because Queen Bee also has a meaning today, or at least it used to, like in high school, referring to, oh, well, that girl's the Queen Bee. I wonder if that is just because the concept of what a queen bee is in a hive, or if it might have any relation back to the fairy tale. Don't know. Guess I'll find out next time. See you then.